What up? We are live. OG Logic, episode 5. What's
Yo,
good, homies?
it's good.
What's going on?
Oh man, it's always the same, isn't it? Isn't it? As they say
Yeah.
in Britain,
In it though.
Yeah.
In it.
isn't it?
In it. Hey, I like bruv.
Huh?
Yeah.
Bruv. Yeah, bruv.
Bruv. Like
What's
I
good, bruv?
so want to say that to people, but I would feel
Yeah.
like such an imposter if I did.
Yeah.
But I totally love that about
Yeah.
the English. You know, it's like, what's up,
Yeah.
bruv? I'm like, yeah, that's badass.
Yeah. I use it when I type on Twitter and stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
bruv. I'm like, bruv.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
never say it. You
Yeah,
there's
I
some
can't.
things you can't say. You know, you gotta leave it to the Brits.
Or mate.
Yeah,
You right, mate?
Yeah, mate.
Yeah, that's another one. Another
Yeah.
one. You just like it, especially being an American. Like you just can't use that. Like you
Yeah.
try and use that in America, like bruv or mate, they're just
Yeah.
gonna be like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even type, mate. I can't
Like,
even do it.
It's the same with
Yeah.
you lot. When you lot say y'all,
Y'all. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can't say
y'all, yeah,
it. Yeah, we can't say
Yeah.
it. It just doesn't.
y'all.
Yeah.
The only time I use y'all is ironically. You know what I mean? Or like if I'm writing, you know, like if
Yeah.
I'm doing some kind of post, you know, I'll be like, y'all don't get it, but like
Yeah.
I don't say it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just something, yeah. Yeah, it's
Funny.
one of those things.
It's
So
funny
do
when
we have an audience yet? How's everybody doing out there? They good?
Let me see, man. You know what? I need to start posting these earlier than like
Yeah.
5 minutes before we doing them.
yeah.
Yeah, man. We need to get
We
them
need to
out.
start
So,
promoting properly. Yeah.
promoting. Yeah.
Yeah. We need to make
For sure.
a proper effort.
Yeah, it's the
For sure.
topics, man. We come up with the topics, you know, it's like
Yeah.
randomly. Sometimes you got a good one, and next time it's like, what are we talking about today?
We're still finding our feet anyway. We're still
Yeah.
in first gear, you know?
It's true. It's true.
It's all good. Coming up fast.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. So talking about, speaking of topics, anti-family, anti-religion, just anti like anything wholesome movement of today's like social media and everything. I mean, it's just like a whole, it's like a whole societal push. It seems like I can go on like for hours about this. I was in the men's community. I don't know if you guys were you guys in that group when I went off on that whole thing and like what I came down with the whole list of like what I believe, all that was connected to. Oh man,
Was that in your group?
yeah. I don't think you're in there. I think it's in the room. It's in the bird trap room. I don't think you're in the bird trap. You know, so
No. Yeah, I'm not trapping any birds.
there you go.
yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all good. You know. Do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's some guys that they're on the market for a wife, so you know, try to trap a bird. So yeah, we were talking about this. And
Are we talking about secularism, or is it an extension of secularism, or is it?
I would say it's an extension. I would say because it's more specific. It's more of its own little niche. You know, like to where you have this push, and we see it all the time on social media. Some of it happens with like the red pill, you know, to where like you'll see something like, man, if you're going to get married in this day and age, you're an idiot, or you don't need to get married, just have a kid. What do you need to bring the law into it for? You know, like all like stuff like that. You know, anti-religion is a big one too. You know, being from California, that's like they pride themselves on being anti-religious. I mean, I even have my younger brother, or one of my younger brothers. He's an engineer. He's an electrical engineer, and he's super duper stereotypical Democrat. Like, I mean, all the Democrat talking points that you would like, if you were to say like, what's just a stereotypical one, this guy would meet every one of them, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when this coronavirus thing like was first starting to kick off, you know, actually it had already kicked off. This was about a month or two ago. We had this conversation to where within the same sentence, he told me like, that's the great thing about California is we don't believe in God or stupid religions.
Wow.
And in the same sentence, he goes, but you need to be believing in science, bro. And I was just like, you don't even fucking hear yourself talking right now, do you? Like you are just you know, don't believe in God, believe in science, bro. And we've seen how wrong can be. Science is proved wrong more than it's proven right. That's part of that's part of the methodology of science. You know, through the scientific method is trying to prove something wrong. You know, so it's like you know, I don't know, man. But stuff like that is very prevalent nowadays to where people are just people are crazy.
It's funny because as a black person, we are traditionally religious people. But I've noticed recently there's a lot of people that are priding themselves on not being religious. You know, they've replaced it with some sort of worship of crystals. I don't know, spiritual. It's just I don't know.
The
but
universe.
Universe, horoscopes, and I can't pinpoint when it first came in because there was a period growing up where every black person I knew was either Christian or Muslim or Rastafarian. Yeah. But there was always a God consciousness where now it's shifting and it's quite big. You know, like some people I see on Twitter, people that I follow, they seem to mock religion quite a lot, and it's like you know that. How do we get here? How did we get to this point? But
there's people that I follow too, people that I've met even, you know, and sometimes they'll be talking that anti-marriage or anti-Christian stuff, and it forces you to put somebody in a different category in your head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can like still be civil, you know, you can still be, you know, associate, do whichever, but like the minute you start like denouncing God or denouncing the family unit or something like that, and I don't care whose God you're denouncing, because I mean, you know what I mean? I don't care what belief you are saying is, it just makes you think about someone different.
Yeah.
You know,
because I think subconsciously we all need to know that a man holds himself to account to something higher than himself. You know, and without the absence of that, there's almost a level of distrust, because it's like if you don't have a God consciousness, then where does your morals lie? Where are your boundaries? You know what I mean? How, not to say that everyone that doesn't believe in God is a bad person, but it's harder to not to say everyone that's religious is a good person, but you can kind of get to know someone's alignment, moral alignment, you know, within, you just know the base of it. And without that, I don't know where to start with you. I really don't know where to start.
I mean, we got multiple things going on here. I mean, first off, I don't know, it was about like maybe 7 or 8 years ago, it just became popular to call yourself an atheist. That was the first thing. It just became like a real popular hip thing to do. And so then all of a sudden everybody started calling themselves atheists. And then to top it off, I mean, coming to what you were just talking about, Sadiq, this is a very important point. It's like people say, you hear this a lot. I don't have to believe in God or follow a religion in order to be a good person. But then every single standards of ethics, virtues, values, morals, and etc. are all based off of a religion.
Yeah.
So the standards of what we consider to be a good person in Western society, in almost any society, is based off of a religion. We have never seen an atheist culture or society, historically or contemporarily. It doesn't exist. Oh, actually, yeah, we did. We saw someone like the communists, but we saw how they turned out. They were, you know, they're savage butchers. You know, they kill people in vast droves and numbers. So, no, absolutely. You know, this is definitely connected to, like, you know, the secular idea. This turn in our society against everything that we consider to be quote unquote wholesome. You know, just to use the word that would trigger Twitter. you know, and it is a problem, you know, because
where's all this coming from though? Like, because obviously we've noticed, you know, a rise in feminism, we've noticed secularism, we've noticed the destruction of the patriarchal system. Where is all this coming from? Like, is this obviously it feels deliberate, but who are the people that are sitting there and deciding this is the way we want the world to go, this is the direction, and this is how we implement it through media, through think tanks? You know, who are the decision makers at the very highest level, and what do they eventually want?
We won't ever know that, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, not if we're talking about the highest level, we won't ever know.
Yeah.
You know, it's just with social media, especially, right, being like this catalyst for. I mean, you guys, we're all older. We remember back in the day that if you didn't have to go to the library and read it, or you didn't see it on the TV, right, it really didn't exist in your world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If unless you were reading it in a newspaper or watching it on television, it wasn't something that just entered your day-to-day life. Now we've got this like super driven catalyst, 24/7 social media. You know, with everybody on it, hundreds of millions of people just on one platform, let alone all of them. You know, and the kind of attitude of human nature that it's been since the beginning is pushing boundaries, right? So sometimes boundaries can be pushed in a good way. To get back at science and talk about the good part of science, you know, sometimes boundaries can be pushed in a good way. You know, we're able to fly. You know, we're able to do things that we weren't previously able to do. But you're going to have people pushing boundaries in other ways, like to where, oh, let's see what I can get away with. Let's see how far this can be taught. I mean, man, we're at the point now to where they're trying to say that pedophilia is just a sexual preference, and they're even like renaming it. They're calling it MAPS. Oh God, what does it stand for? It's a minor attracted person.
Yeah, minor attracted. I saw that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's no longer a perversion.
Well, we know different, but that's, you see what I'm saying is people are pushing this envelope. There was actually a TED Talk, and it was a female giving it too. But there was a TED Talk that, to where, and I'm going, what in the hell? But that's what people, they do. They push boundaries, and they continue to push them. And when you've got something that's just, you know, nitrous injected, like social media, it just goes and goes everywhere, and people parrot.
We're dealing in we're in very interesting times because we're like in unprecedented and uncharted territory. We have two things at play here that definitely affect all of this, and that is one, just more freedom than we've ever had at any point in the history of man. We've never seen man running around unchecked entirely like we have in Western society today in terms of personal freedoms. And then you combine that unchecked hyper personal freedom together with hyper individualism and no sense of collective society, accountability to society, responsibility to society, and where it goes. And so those two things, they lead to the individual not really caring about how his actions, his deeds, his beliefs, whatever else, all of that has an effect on society as a whole. It's just me. And he doesn't, you know, we have the anti-slut shaming. We've got this, don't be ashamed of this, don't be ashamed of that. You know, everybody just wants to be free to do whatever they want, and they don't want to be shamed by the society they live in. And that's an absolute necessity, in my humble opinion, to keeping like societal order in place. And what do we see now? We see everything but that. You know, we see people coming up with 82 genders or however many there are. You know,
so
people identifying as all of them.
So what's the counter to all of this? Because the counter it doesn't seem it's going to come from a place of hierarchy, if that makes sense. It seems like the media's not going to counter it. The governments are not going to counter it. So as a people, how do we, because I had this conversation with my son's mum, and I told her, I said, we actually have to make a conscious effort to teach our son masculinity. We can't no longer just leave it to the elements or his biology. We actually have to, because nature, I mean, the society is not going to actually do anything to bring that out of him, because it's gone.
Yeah.
So we have to actually nurture the manliness out of him. And it was weird because I thought, as a child, I had nobody to teach me what was masculine or what was not. It just, you know, society was geared up in a way where it was natural for us. And I'm sure how it would have been with you guys. Of course, you would have had fatherly influences, but, you know, society was geared for us to be masculine, where with the new generation, it's actually not. So yeah, we actually have to make a conscious effort. But how many generations can we keep doing this before our teachings get phased out? And it's just like, you know, your great grandchild is wearing a tiara and holding a wand, and says that he's not a he's not a male, and that's the end of your that's the end of your that's the end of the line of your genetics.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, what do we do? Like, it's scary, because we could teach one generation. How is it gonna keep going down and down and down?
Yeah, and it's funny because the masculinity in popular society isn't accepted unless it's somehow feminized. You know, if it's something that's traditional, right, it's toxic, right?
Yeah.
But if it's this feminized thing on, this is how you be a man, is you wear a tiara with your daughter and you dance around and, you know, put on the tutu, and yeah, I mean, we've all seen the videos, man. You know, we've seen the different stuff of dudes and listen, I can understand, you've got kids, you love your kids, okay, and you want to make your kids happy and you don't want to be the killjoy, right?
Yeah.
However, loving your children is teaching them right.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, we can't continue this idea where everybody gets a trophy. You know, and that's essentially what it is. It's okay, I'm going to make him feel good. I'm going to make her feel good. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make him feel good. No, the way that you're going to make good kids into better adults is you have to teach them to embrace things that that might be a hardship or might not make them feel good. You know, you learn the real lessons when you aren't feeling good. You know what I mean? That's when you learn the best lessons. I don't want to go too far into it, but we can say that nothing teaches like trauma, right? You put your hand on a stove when it's hot, and you will never put your hand on a hot stove again.
Yeah.
You know, because you learned, right? You stick a butter knife in a light socket. And I know that's not like that over here in Europe, but in America, you can do that. But you stick a piece of metal in a light socket, you know, or whatever, and you get that zap. You're never doing that again. You know,
power of pain is an awesome motivator and teacher.
Right. And we can give that to our children less. I'm not saying that we're trying to cause them pain, but what I'm trying to say is that we need to not always be so concerned about 100% making them happy all the time. It's the same as giving every kid a trophy.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. That parallels a tweet I saw the other day. To paraphrase it, it said, if you don't expose your son to hardship and trauma in childhood, if you expose a child to trauma and hardship at an early age, you rob them of their childhood. But if you protect them from trauma and hardship too much, you rob them of their manhood.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to cultivate some form of way where they can learn hardship. This is why rites of passage, as we said in the previous episode, rites of passage. You know, we have to implement our own ways of creating hardness in our sons, even in our children. You know, society's not going to do it for us.
Yeah, you know, sure. You were making a good point, or asking a solid question there. I think, in my humble opinion, is like, what do we do for our children? And this is the thing that I got all these unpopular opinions about what solutions are, and I think the age of greater societies is over, and we're returning back to the age of tribalism. And I think that's what the solution is. You have to have a tribe, and that tribe has to be based upon mutual ethics, virtues, morals, values, you know. And when you have that tribe, then your children are surrounded by families that raise their children in the same fashion that you do. And therefore, when you raise your children with a standard here and society standards are here, well, yeah, who do your kids meet with? Who your kids have kids with? You know, who do they marry? So, but when you're in a tribe and everybody has the same ethics, virtues, morals, values, and then, you know, you bring them up in a society where there are children that are like-minded, what do? They marry from amongst each other.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, I literally don't see an option. I mean, if somebody has a better option for me, then I mean, I'm open to hearing it. But right now, I think we're returning to the age of tribalism. I think that the age of greater societies is ended. There's so much hyper, like I said, individualism, that who do you unite with? I go on Twitter, and like I said, I find it a toxic environment just by looking at the tweets of people in general. It's not, you know, and it's just like, wow, it's like, you really just don't care. Just a prime example. I mean, everybody's talking about, you know, what's wrong with Western society, and what's wrong with men, and what's wrong with women, all these whores, all these lames, all this and that. But then at the same time, you'll find these very same people promoting the idea that it's okay to sleep with another man's wife just because she's living.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so what are you? You know,
yeah,
you're talking about
absolutely
whores and
dead on.
You're in the society, you're in the process, you are part of making that very society that you're complaining about.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's been so frustrating to me with this whole anti-marriage, family thing, is just what you said. With some of these dudes out there, they'll talk about how the West is lost. These kids, they're all a bunch of lames and pussies growing up, no mothers or no fathers in their life or whatever. And then they'll talk about, you ain't got to be married. You can still, screw a hoe and have a kid and be in the kid's life and whatever. And it's like, that's essentially the whole downfall. The way it started was taking the family unit out of the picture, making it not important.
Indeed.
So how do we fix that?
I think society needs a war.
Good.
It has to be the tribe, I think.
As bad as it sounds, we need a crash in the system. We need a war. I think only like a global war where men are forced to be men, resources are limited, I think going back to basics, will probably be the reboot that's needed for society, because, this is just a result of too much luxury, too much fun, not enough hardship, not enough masculine, even things to do. Even if you wanted to be masculine, you almost have to carve that niche yourself. So that's you going to the gym, that's you going to martial arts, that's you. There's no onus upon you to go and fight a war or go and protect the women in your house. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like once things go back to just basic instincts, maybe that, as bad as it sounds, no one wants a war, but I think a war might actually be the the best thing for society, almost like a natural selection.
Yeah.
But
I've been saying it for a while. The only thing that's going to correct society is a crash. That's it.
yeah,
We need a major crash that's going to, unfortunately, crash our society. And then what's going to have to happen? People are going to have to actually, like, be about something and be about some sort of life. There's not going to be this hyper individualism because you won't make it on your own, and the society gets collapsed.
yeah,
It's just impossible. And then what happens? Once you get into a society, you're going to have expectations put upon you. And those people who can't control themselves, what's going to happen? This guy's going to want to sleep with this guy's wife. He can't control himself with his pants.
yeah, head blown
Society
off.
finds out, and they're gonna do like you do in some parts of the world to this day. They're gonna take you out somewhere, and you're gonna be dealt with. If you think you're a woman and you're actually a man, or you think you're a man and you're actually a woman, and you start trying to get into those circles, in a society where men need to be men, where are you gonna fit in as a third gender person? Well, here's your weapon, and we're going out here as the third gender person. I don't, you're not chilling here with the women. You're going to be forced into your role. And so, absolutely, it's going to have to take a collapse because there's no other way to force people into particular actions other than to force their hand and force them to behave in a certain situation. And this goes back to what I was personally saying earlier. We have too much freedom. People need coercion.
Yeah. So can you see a global event like that happening? Is that something that you could picture in any time soon, or do you feel like we've got a long way to go before we get to that point?
I think the days of World War I and World War II are over. It's not going to go down like that. We've got too much technology to where it doesn't need to go down like that. You'll always need boots on the ground. Okay. Always. You can't take over a place unless you have people there. Okay. But that being said, we've got we can just launch rockets and we can just literally put up the whole Air Force and Navy and just bomb the holy hell out of something. I mean, it's not like the old days to where
horseback
people had well, not only that, but people had a real sense of unity. And I think that a lot of this problem that has to go with is we've made laws to where people aren't accountable. Like we've actually made laws to where someone can do or say basically whatever they want, short of like a personal assault or something like that. And it's just good. Like, I mean, it's like, okay, well, I got to sue you now and take you to court and all that. I mean, back in the day, right? Two dudes had some beef. They'd go out in the parking lot. They can, put them up, solve it. And then, like, if the cops did show up, he's like, okay, you want to press charges? You want to press charges? Okay, well, we're out of here. And it was like that things could be solved. We've made it to where people can, on anything, just be like, I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to call I'm going to do that. And so there's no accountability. And when you take any type of personal accountability out of anything, then you could do and say whatever the hell you want, because there's nothing that's going to keep you in check otherwise. Just like you were saying, Greg, like when, a guy's got to act a certain way. And if he doesn't, he gets dealt with, right? There is none of that. You can act any old which way you want, say any old, and if anything, you're protected, because we view individualism as something cherished and unique. Like it's a right, like the way that it's viewed, to where people don't view it necessarily as a hindrance.
Yeah,
I mean,
but this brings us all back to what we were talking about earlier, which is basically, and people aren't going to like this, of course, it's just the end of faith in society. It's the end of belief. I mean, because nobody that's online right now that I can think of, maybe someone could push a 1 in the comment section, where do you live that you're in a society and develop? Hold on, let me rethink these words here. Anyone online right now lives in a society or a culture that was in its infancy established and based upon a religious society and culture, be it Christianity, Islamic, or something else. If you don't come from a society, good God, what is wrong with me today? That was based upon a religion, hit 1. Let me know. If you come from an atheist society or culture, let me know. And so the further you move away from all of that, aka into atheism, or the universe, what are you following other than your desires as a biological being? So now everything actually is boiled down to basically just biological imperatives. We're just walking animals that can we just actually have it's a pure accident that we have the capacity to speak now. But really all it is just, and excuse my friend, well, I'm not going to cuss, but and eating. And that's everything then.
Yeah.
What else are we then?
Yeah.
And cool stuff.
Yeah.
Nice house, nice car.
Well, that's part of because that's how you get the ladies, right? You get cool stuff.
Well, right,
but
but that's what it is it's your possessions and your desires. It's just like, it's purely like, how much can I get, and then what do I feel like doing? And that's you're just beholden to no one but yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
And if I can't do it, why can't I do it? And then let's campaign so that I can do
it. Too big.
Yeah.
Too big. You ask me, how do I keep my faith rock solid in these testing times? Bro, I mean, I don't know your history because I don't, I just know you two. I think you're in the group, actually. I'm not sure. I think he's in my men's community, if I'm not mistaken. But whatever. I've been out there, dude. I've been in the world. I've been in the dunya, as we call it, the worldly life. And, and I just don't find it appealing. I lived in Germany as a black man. I grew up here. And as a black man, you are the flavor of the week every day of the week. They just don't get tired of it because there's just not. There's a constant 100% to this day scarcity of dark meat in Germany, and so everybody wants it. Even the gay guys want it. I had to tell you how many times I had to shoot down gay guys. So I mean, and no, I ain't never done nothing gay in my life. Alhamdulillah. So anyway, the fact is that I've had the girls. I didn't really do drugs. I was only weed. I mean, that's drugs, but but that's before Islam. I drank alcohol. I did all this stuff, and I just never saw the benefit to it in my life. It never led me anywhere that I wanted to be. And so anywhere I wanted to be required work. And I personally believe that there is accountability in the next life. I don't believe you just die and that's it, lights are out. I don't believe you just black and then you're gone. People can believe what they want to believe. I don't believe that's what happens. And so if you want what you believe is to be correct in the hereafter, then you're going to have to work for it. And I don't think God, Allah in my case, who I believe is the one true God, I don't think he's just left us out here to just sort of figure it out on his own. He's going to make everything with order and structure, with perfection, and then all of a sudden it's just like, well, here's this perfect world and perfect things and everything in it, from the fruits, the vegetables, the bugs, and everything interacts perfectly. And we're just going to throw in this wild card called humanity. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And when I think about it like that, with the logic and the order that the creation exists of, I'm the wild card on the chaos part, is that it really? I'm just sort of thrown out there to do whatever I want to do, or is there a place for me in there also? And if there is, then it has to be more than just the physical world, because in the physical world, Allah has made us the dominant species no matter where we go. We can go into an environment, and unlike other species where we fit in, we just knock everything down. And if something predatorises us, then we take the tables and turn it on them, and then we turn predation on them. We don't fit in the ecosystem other than to just come along and destroy it at all levels. So that means our purpose on the planet has to be more than physical. It has to be. Because the physical world was given to us, like just on a platter. When we look at humanity, I know I'm going on a rant, guys, sorry. But we lack the tough skin of like rhinoceroses and hippopotamuses. We don't have claws of tigers, and their teeth. We lack all of the necessary tools to actually be physically in charge of our environment. This has to be divine anyway. just the simple fact that we, these little soft human beings, are out here, and tigers, for the most part, will run from us unless you corner them.
Yeah.
This has to be divine. So what is our purpose? Because physical, it's not a physical challenge. There's no challenge for us there. We got these big brains that Allah gave us, so we dominate our environment. So Allah gave us something more to struggle with and battle with than our environment. Because Germany used to have wolves, giant wolves, actually. They had wolves that were bigger than men in Germany. It's historically written and proven that Germany had giant wolves and bears.
That dire wolves?
Yes, we dominate our environment. So there's more to it than just like physical worlds. And that's how I keep my faith. Because I remember that Allah has given us, as he says in the Quran, he's given us fadl, he's given us preference on earth. And so it's like, okay, preference for what? Now what do we do with it? Because he could drop us with a rock and a stick anywhere, and we're going to control our environment. So there has to be more than just a physical challenge and whatever else and struggle of money and food and whatever else. Because anyone can learn how to survive in any environment, even with society like booming how it is around us. That means you are left with nothing but your spiritual struggle to fight against the desires that are inside of us that want to just do whatever they want to do, however they want to do, once we figured out how we thrive in an environment. That's just me, though. Sorry, guys, rant over.
No, it's all good. And that's part of the problem, too, is that like, we're made in God's image, but more and more people are trying to make God in our image, with this push towards like this. I mean, man, let me tell you something. First of all, I don't care what someone's personal preferences are, because they've got their own life and stuff to deal with, just like I got my own life to deal with. So if somebody's gay, that doesn't like affect me. Like I'm gonna freak out and be, oh, you must die, or something. It doesn't affect me. It's like, okay, whichever, man. In Northern California, before I left, there's churches, like Christian churches, that they've got the gay flag hanging outside. Right? Yeah, man, I promise you it's real. Okay, and not just one or two, but like a whole bunch, right?
Oh,
and that's what I mean, like, to where it's like making God in your image.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got your own things so you start to take the all divine, right, and put your human infallibility into it, or excuse me, fallibility rather, and you're making like something that's a perversion, and you, that doesn't just happen with religion, unfortunately. It happens on a lot of different philosophical and ideology, you know what I mean, on different levels. Okay, yeah, I know. Me and you were having the same problem.
I know, right?
No, but so that's what's happening, is that like saying earlier, where there's supposed to be accountability, right? There is no accountability. So there is no accountability to a code, to a creed, and you can just make it however you want it, and that's no good. That has to change.
I agree, but then this requires a harsh world, and we're not ready for it, and that's why I think a collapse has to happen. But I want to come back to something you were talking about, Sadiq, man. Who's behind this? It's too structured, it seemed. It's too ordered to just be happening randomly or accidentally. That's my humble opinion also. I mean, everybody talks about this cabal in the background and all that stuff. I mean, that's a little bit, it might be real. It seems a bit kooky to me. But at the same time, it's like, there has to be somebody just back there just pushing buttons randomly. Like, hey, what's that do?
I read something one time. Do you remember Professor Griff from Public Enemy?
I do.
Yeah, there's a video of him, and he was talking about institutions that basically there's a place in England called Tavistock Institution, where they are the base of like public trends. This is places supposedly where they originate the process, that the thoughts. So let's say the trend of 2021, everyone's gonna have pink Mohicans, and this place is where they start the social experiments, and then from there it moves on to like the think tanks and the media, and then you find that there's like a push almost simultaneously, because I've noticed little things that how can I explain it? All right, I mentioned Mohicans. David Beckham had a Mohican a few years ago. Puff Daddy had a Mohican a few years ago. The streets of London were filled with Mohicans, and this was literally for like a 2-year period, and it just came and it went. You know, like almost like these trends seem to just appear at the same time, all different media outlets, you know, fashion. It's too formulated, it's too planned. So basically what he's saying is that Tavistock Institute is where it's the head of these trends, and then it filters down to the media. So the Hollywood directors will be informed, okay, this is the new direction. Producers, artists, they will also be informed, journalists. So then it's like a push the button, this is the new agenda. And I'm inclined to, maybe that's not what it is, but I'm inclined to believe that this is formulated. It's not, you know, these things are just not appearing out of nowhere. They just can't be. It's the probability of it's too high for it to be a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's something that I saw that said like all the different news outlets, right? All the different media outlets, the different like entertainment outlets, not just news, but entertainment, all that stuff. They're essentially owned by like 6 or 7 companies.
Yeah.
There's 6 or I forget if it's 6 or 7. I think it might be 7, but 6 or 7 that own everything. So like everything you see on TV, the movies that you go and watch, right? All that stuff it's just this at the very head. There's like 6 or 7 guys. Or 6 or 7 boards, we can even say. We can even take the CEO and we'll include the whole board, right? So if that's the case, then it's real easy to coordinate something like that, because you're not going with thousands of people or whatever. If you've got, let's say, 10 to 20 people on a board, right? And there's 6 companies, you know, that's 60 to 72 people that can just meet. I mean, you could do that in a convention hall, you know. So and that's where you always see it starting. I mean, everything starts by what people are watching. Sometimes it'll start with the news, other times it'll be, you know, some, like you were saying, with a movie or with a whatnot, but it all starts at the screen that people are watching. It's even more than music, you know, because music tends to follow what's going on, you know. Music isn't so much a trendsetter as it's like a trend microphone. You know, when you look at the 60s and stuff like that, there was a movement and then the musicians started writing about it.
It's art imitating life.
Exactly right. So I mean, it's not difficult, you know, if you think about it.
You know what I think?
No, sorry, I was gonna cover what Dupo said here. He said concerning that hidden cabal, I'm fairly convinced that people are too selfish to congregate and cooperate in such a way unnoticed. I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Dupo. Dave Chappelle talked about it before he disappeared. When Dave Chappelle disappeared off to Africa for like months, nobody, including his wife, knew where he was. He talked about this, that he was under pressure, you know, from that Hollywood group, that Hollywood cabal that like tries to feminize and even like, you know, just bang dudes, you know what I mean, and just turn them like real faggoty. Another person, Muta Abil, he was part of Outlaws. Yeah. He is now in Saudi Arabia. He reverted to Islam. He used to be a musician, and he literally, him and his cousin talk about this in detail in the past, that they were literally under pressure to, like, you know, do weird stuff. They were seeing weird stuff, you know, and behaviors that were like really like crooked in order to be famous.
Yeah.
So there's obviously something going on somewhere.
I can tell you 100% that
100%.
happens.
Yeah, it does.
From my own experience, that happens. Yeah.
To add a religious element, as a Muslim, I'm into Islamic eschatology as well as Abrahamic faith eschatology, and there's this concept of Antichrist. In Islam we call him the Dajjal, and the Dajjal is basically about duality. If you look at what he's about, it's literally flipping everything upside down. So, he's impersonating the Christ. So he's the Antichrist. So this is a world of duality, as we all know. And if you can see the way the world is going, left is being turned to right, and right is being turned to left. So everything's flipping around. So we as Muslims believe they are forerunners to this Antichrist who are preparing the way for him to come. So wouldn't it make sense for them to flip everything on its head in preparation for his arrival? We could see the symbolism everywhere. We can't ignore the symbolism. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said that he's going to have one eye. He said that the Antichrist is going to have one eye. And we could see this one eye symbolism everywhere. We don't have to look too hard to find it. Even if you're not a conspiracy theorist, you're just going to see it. Even on the dollar bill, you're going to see the symbol of the one eye, which I believe is connected to this prophecy of Antichrist coming. So I believe all of this is connected. I believe this is a deliberate crash of the godly system, which is to be replaced by a new system. Almost. I don't know how it's going to look. That's one thing I don't know. I don't know how it's going to look, but they are preparing. It's a deliberate preparation for something.
Hey, I'll tell you what you were talking about the weird push. Oh, somebody coming in?
Yeah, that's right.
Hello. Hey, Ray.
Hey, bro. What's up?
So not much, man. So that weird push you were talking about. So check this out. When I was 19 years old, I got signed to a record label, and it's a record label that's known. Okay. And I was asked, we were given a certain front of money, and which they give you money so that you can buy studio time and pay producers, but it's a loan. It's not like they're giving it to you like, here, this is yours. It's essentially a loan. Yeah, yeah. So they said, we could pick. They gave us a list of producers to choose from, and one of the producers that was on that list had done a lot of old school artists, like from the 80s, that I was into, like had worked with Michael Jackson, worked with the Pointer Sisters, had worked with like a bunch of these different artists to where like there was beat behind it. So I was like, okay, this is somebody that's going to know how to, do a good driving drum section, right? So I started working with this guy, and he was all hip, okay? I went to a party at his house in Hollywood Hills. It was the typical, or like stereotypical, there were drugs everywhere, there was whichever. But the third time I was in the studio with him, the dude put his hand on I was sitting next to him in listening to the playback with him, and the guy put his hand on my thigh, but like kind of on the inside a little bit, right? And this guy was already in his 40s, I was 19 years old or something like that. And I was just like, oh, no, bro, like, no.
Yeah, you're like,
right? Yeah, I was like, no, sorry, and I could tell he was embarrassed, but like, I tried to play it off as best as I could as a kid, right? Like, oh, no, but that was essentially, he stopped returning the calls, didn't want to work anymore. And then I became like jaded with it, like to where it's like, so this is what they want you to do. Like, you have to be gay in order to do. And it was a trip, man, because every time I'd see somebody up and coming, especially if like they were just talentless, right? That'd be the first thought that I'd think back to that recording studio and be like, I wonder what they had to do. Yeah. I wonder what like they went through to be there right now.
Indeed.
Because it's I can tell you firsthand, that's a real thing, man. Like to where they will, and it's totally like homosexual pedophilia. I mean, I was 19 years old. Okay, so technically it wasn't pedophilia, but I mean, this dude was like in his late 40s, you know, or whatever, and I was still a lot younger. To where it's like that kind of like man boy, like just weird. You know, they even said that about that dude, Lou. I think his name was Lou Pearlman, the guy that was put together In Sync. You know, Justin Timberlake and all that stuff. They said he was gay and doing stuff with them and all that. So I mean, it's like it's like a culture. So yeah, that yeah, it definitely exists, like for sure.
Yeah. Oh, Wraith, sorry. Wraith is another guy that I'm on weekly with, Do Party generally. And yesterday I was on my show with Affy Kingdom, and I didn't really know a lot about him, so I wanted to interview him. And Wraith is kind of the same way. I'm with him on shows constantly, but I really don't know much about him. I should probably have him on the show sometime. But anyway, Wraith, welcome to the show. I'm inviting him on because I know him and I'm on shows with him, and he wasn't a cool guy. I should have said something to you guys when we were talking in the live chat. I thought you saw it, so you guys were like, "Oh, somebody's here."
I don't even.
And as you can see,
I should look at it.
You can see Wraith is an old head just like us, so you know.
Okay, Bob, the oldest one here.
Probably, but welcome. So you were talking in the comments, Wraith. Go ahead and drop it on us, man.
Well, I think, when we were talking about earlier about what the hidden agenda is, I think the hidden agenda, it's basically consumerism. I mean, if you look through the Industrial Revolution, being a consumer, they figured out people being consumers was a way to make money and to make a lot of money. So if you create a society that's driven by desire, okay, first the desire for comfort, and then as you see right now, we're living in a society that's, it's a physical desire thing now, and it allows, when there's no limit to your desire, and you're not making your opinions based on values, but desire. This is where we go. And if you look, if you think back just to the 70s, if you talk about homosexuality, if you think back to the 70s, I mean, it was illegal in every country.
It was in, what you call it? It was in the Psychological Guide of like Human Health or something, whatever it's called.
Yeah, as a deviant behavior, mental illness with deviant behavior.
Yep.
And as we normalize that, I mean, look at what else can be normalized. I mean, I think, 20 years ago, I wrote a paper for one of my psychology classes about, pedophilia. It's considered the same thing that homosexuality was in the 70s right now, but as you see, that's even going away. I mean, it's crazy. If there's no limits to desire, then that means there's no limits to to sexual desire. And that's that's the societies, all the societies are built on that now, because, the reality of it is no man is satisfied, or no human is satisfied now just to, go through and live a life. And I'm not talking about a life of strife, but a life of, common comfort. Okay, because that doesn't feed consumerism.
Man. I saw this today, and I couldn't even comment on it because I didn't want to look at the video.
No.
Like I just so wrong.
Sick.
This is our society today.
I don't even like looking at it, just because it's like I saw it and it's just like it's fucking disgusting. Excuse my language, but I mean it's just, I can't believe that this stuff is getting normalized to this point. Like, anyways, yeah. Just not a fan.
And we read through just talking about it, there are no limits. What are the limits, and how do we place the limits? The only model that we know is religion, and there is a push against religion today. So if we push against the one thing that's giving humans boundaries, that gave us proper societal, or what we consider to be, I guess us old heads consider to be proper societal boundaries and etiquettes, I don't know, morals and ethics, where are we going? Where is this going to lead us? This push away from, because Twitter is an example, is a perfect example of that place where there is a literal war in the manosphere, in my humble opinion, which I consider myself to be part of, against religion and belief. And where is it leading us? Where is it going to take us? We don't have a clue. I can't imagine it's going to be anywhere good, because if it would lead us anywhere good, we would have had a model for it in society already. We would have a society somewhere that had tried it and did it, and it worked. And every society that we see that had it and tried it, it never worked. We had the Romans. They eventually went down into, I'm going to use the word. I'm going to use it. Wraith, I'm sorry if I throw you under the bus by using it. Degeneracy. But Twitter hates that word. I'm going to use it just because of that. And what happened to Rome? What happened to the Greek? They went down that route. Where are they at? Where are they today? Even today, in this day and age, there's still a failed society. Those bums in Greece. And if anybody in the crowd is Greek, I'm sorry, but your country, you're the bums of the EU, okay? Let's just be honest. You in Spain.
Are they really? See,
yes.
I learn something new every day, man. Everybody's gonna be like, "I hate you, Bob," but no.
They're the guys that clean your window of Europe. They're the guys that clean your window at the stoplight of Europe. That's what Greece and Spain are. So no. I'm just saying, where are we going? They never recovered. Not entirely.
Well, I think when you start looking at that, though, look, most societies have tried to replace humanism for religion. Okay, and by humanism, I'm thinking, if you look at it from a humanistic standpoint, there's a belief that humans are basically and naturally good, and we're not. Mm-mm. The reality of it is we're just hairless apes. And we're driven by those physical psychosexual desires, and if you don't apply rules and values to those, they get out of control. And if you look all the way back through history, religion did that, and even the warrior class of tribes, they had rules. Even before they had religion, they had rules. And when you throw all the rules out, which is where we live today, where you allow your desire and your pleasure to drive your actions, this is where we're at, and this is what we have. And the thing is if you just go into, and Abu knows what communities I'm in, but if you just go into game theory and all that stuff, what that does is it creates a situation where young men are trying to find ways to, meet their physical agenda, or the male imperative is to reproduce. And, when they do that without balance, it creates the issue where, it devalues the woman, but it also, what they don't understand is it devalues the man. And
that's what we're seeing now. Our society, it doesn't provide, and I might be mistaken here, but because right now I'm going into hypothesis here, but someone help me out here if I'm wrong and if I'm off track. I personally don't see the dignity and honor for men and women in society today. Where do we derive our dignity and honor? We're actually trying to make new ways to establish dignity and honor. Well, your dignity or your honor as a man is based upon money and lay count. Money is arguably okay, fine. That shows that a man actually can take resources or earn or make or produce resources from nowhere. Lay counts, I'm even willing to play with that because I'm a polygynous man. But I believe that there has to be restrictions upon it. That's my humble opinion. I mean, yeah, go ahead, get yourself some girls, get you 4 girls, man. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm on 2. I'm looking for number 3. But I mean, I think that this whole and when you're like, at 265, I mean, what the hell are you doing, man? It's like, come on, 265, really? Okay. I mean, I'm a guy, and I'm like, damn, that's pretty impressive. But I'm just sort of like, I can't remember the last time I did 265 repetitions of something that didn't really take me anywhere, and lead to something, that made me superior at something. If I do 265 repetitions of a kick, I know for sure if I kick you, you're going down. Okay, you do 265 repetitions of sex, no, have 1 kid. Manigas, what's going on here, man? What's the goal? Where's it going?
Sure.
So I don't know, man. I'm just sorry, I'm ranting again, bro.
Because even for animals, they have a purpose when it comes to reproduction. They're trying to survive and reproduce, but it's almost we've gone to a lower status than animals because it's literally just for pleasure.
I mean, I love women. I love sex with women, but it's just like I've come to the point where it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, and I think a lot of times what I've come to find is, and I'll say this, alhamdulillah, I'm blessed, because it's like most of the guys that I see, they get up there in huge numbers, they end up being, what's the word I'm looking for? Nihilistic in regards to women, and that's also problematic also, because now you have maybe guys that are able to be successful, build something, be something, and they're not passing on that superiority to a genetic lineage that can, lead to the betterment of mankind in a sense. You know what I mean? The guy might be good at making money, he's good at building his body, he's genetically sound or whatever, and fit whatever else, but he's become so nihilistic about women because he's only seen the worst of women, because he's learned the tactics and techniques to get the worst of women in the way that he wants. Now what's he's left with? He's left with nothing but a bad idea of women. I mean, I've only had good relationships with women, but like I said, I'm blessed. But I want to cover something that Ray said. I know I'm ranting, guys, and I apologize. This humanist idea that men are naturally good, and boy, are they wrong. Islamically, there's 2 statements that kind of go against that. And when Adam, alayhi salam, because we're going into religion here, when he was created from the clay of earth, and Allah left the clay to dry, and Allah told one of the angels, go and look at what I've created, go look at Adam. And the angels, they said, have you created one who will, go about and shed blood upon the earth? Meaning he's naturally have an aggressive, angry, evil nature. I mean, the angels could recognize it in men, And in another narration of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was out with one of his wives, and he started introducing his wives to some companions who saw him. And they were shocked. They were like, why are you telling us this? Like, do you think we're basically, not that they would get the idea that he was out with a random woman. And he was like, no, he said, verily the devil, he said, Shaitan, he runs through the blood of man, like, he runs through the veins of man like blood, So, I mean, this idea that humans are naturally good, we don't have this, in Islam. We don't believe this, and that's why we believe that people need like strong regulation and control. This is why we have such harsh, punishments in Islam. People are like, they're barbaric, they're this, they're that. People are barbaric. Do we not see what they do, to each other? Do they not hack each other to pieces, without justification, reason, purpose, or rhyme? Do they not go out, rape, murder, kill, loot, and whatever else? Of course we have harsh rules, because if you just start incrementally letting things go, well, we see what's happening in our society today. Those incremental small increases become a bigger and bigger gap. This is the exact same thing as drug addiction, what we're seeing in our society today. Down regulation, if anybody doesn't know what drug addiction is called scientifically, it's called down regulation receptor transcription. It's more than drug addiction. It's greater than that, but this is part of the process. And what does that mean? That means once you become desensitized to one thing, it takes more and more and more and more for you to get that kick or that feeling. And so this is part of why Islam has like that very tight regulation, because once you open up a crack, we need a little bit more space and more space and more space, because what is normal becomes wider and wider and wider. And this is why when I say to people that are dealing, when I have my one-to-ones, and they're dealing with like an unreasonable spouse or wife or whatever else, I say, deal with reasonable people reasonably. Deal with unreasonable people extra unreasonable, because their baseline is unreason. You can't like talk unreason to unreason. So you have to up the game. This is why back in the days, I knew back when I wrote. I mean, Wraith actually read my book, The Mad Monkey. This was back in the days. I used to just punch some people in the face. I didn't argue with him because he's not going to understand debate. He's not going to understand conversation. I'm like, this is a person you just got to knock out. You know, and our society is that person right now. We're just completely unreasonable. Like that video we just saw. That's just madness.
Yeah.
How did we get to this point? You know, 10 years ago, you would have never seen a video like this.
Never.
So what's going to happen in 10 more years? What are we going to be looking at in 10 more years? I don't want to know. It's madness. Sorry, rant over. Sorry, guys. I've been ranting today.
All good.
Yeah.
Making sense.
You know, that one thing from prison time, okay, and just relating to something you just said right now, bro. I tell this to my wife and my daughter. Like, we'll be out somewhere late at night, and like they might see some homeless people or like some people that just look like they're up to no good or whatever, and they'll get. I can see that they get, or they would get a little nervous, you know. And she'd tell me, why aren't you ever nervous about that shit? And it's because, like, I know that I'm the one that can go 100 times more crazier than they can. Like, yeah. I'm the dude that goes bump in the night. And
you're the monster.
Right. It's like we're not out there with them. They're out here with me. You know what I mean? And that's how it was, like, in the joint, was that the way that you dealt with crazy was you were crazy. Crazy recognizes crazy. Yes. You know, just like sane recognizes sane, crazy recognizes its own. So when they see that you and it ain't even about, like, you know, hey, and getting all, they could just see it in your eyes. You ain't even got to say nothing. You can just look at somebody, and you're not even giving them a mean look or whatever. Just the fact that you'll look at them, just the fact you'll look at them right in the eye. You know, you can even give them a smile and a nod, and they'll know, like, oh yeah, this one, you know, because it's true. Like, when you deal with a certain people or a certain type, they recognize it, and that's the only way that you can deal with that. There is no rationalization,
and we don't have that in our society anymore.
Right, and I think that's part of this fascination with like, you ever notice, like, the most popular movies or TV shows are about cops or about, like, crime somehow or whatever. It's because the average person has a fascination with crazy and violence because of how far removed they are from it, right? So it's almost like this romanticized notion, you know, to where it's like, ooh, watch this, or ooh, that because they've never had to do that. Yeah. You know, and so it's like, it's a fascinating thing to them. So when you do when you have had to live that life, and you have been in those situations, it's something to where it's recognizable to others that are in similar situations or have been.
See, on a societal level, since Saudi Arabia actually used to have this for a societal level. If you got out of line, there was these guys, they called them the Mutawwa, and they were called the religious police. They've been banned now. And if you did something goofy, the religious police would show up, and they're an organization outside of law enforcement. And they carried around these big sticks, and they'd be like, hey, what do you think you're doing? And they'd be like, wah-da-da-da-da-da, you know? And they actually had authority, you know, to arrest you and put you on trial for, like, you know, behaviors that were considered to be outside of religious and societal norms. They've been banned now. And what's happening to Saudi? The last bastion of, like, basically, you know, moral society, it's falling apart really rapidly. You know, I've got homies that live there, and they're telling me it's like they've got things going on there. I'm getting videos and pictures, whatever else. Just stuff is like, wow, you know, it's a mess, man. And that's what we need, in my humble opinion. And a lot of people don't want to hear this, because this goes back to the beginning of the show when we said this: hyper individualism. everybody wants to just be absolutely free to do whatever they want to do, and there's no accountability or responsibility to the greater society around you. You know, we see it all the time. And I mean, I like him. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to mention his name here, and so people don't be like, "Oh, you're talking about Troy, Renegade Playboy." I like the dude. I really do. I met him face to face. I talked to him. I follow him. He follows me. But he's like, you know, you can't, Renegade Playboy, Troy. He's like, you can't save society. And I'm like, well, yeah. If we all individually think like that, obviously we can't. You know. But if we have as a collective, as a tribe, and this is why I think tribal societies are coming back. If everybody in the tribe thinks I have a responsibility to my people, aka going back to the R/K selection theory, if nobody's read that book, read it. Well, then yes, you can actually save your society. But if everybody's like hyper individualistic, then no way you're going to save it. Absolutely not. Then I agree with him in that, because now if I, Abuamerican, am going to try and save society, and I'm going to go out here with my cape, you know, and it's just me, well, I'm a goofball, you know. But if there's like, you know, 100,000 people like me, you know what I mean? Even in a society of 1 million, that's something to reckon with, you know? So this is why I say we're coming back to the age of tribalism, because we have like massive numbers of people nowadays. How many billion people on Earth? I don't even know, you know?
It's like
and amongst
7.
And amongst those billions, 7 or 8 billion people, amongst those billions, we've got a few million who might believe the same way or roughly the same way. And those people are geographically separated around the world, and we only unite here on the internet. And so it's tribalism, man. We're going back to the age of tribalism. Society is going to collapse. I think it's an inevitability. It's not like gloom and doom. It might not look like, you know, fire and brimstone and people on the street. It's not going to be like the Purge. But when that collapse comes, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, hey, look, we actually saw this. Here it is, you know? And you're going to need your tribe at that time. And if you don't, who knows what sort of madness you're going to become a victim to, because we see no end to the madness. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Where's it going to stop? You know?
I think it's like a pendulum, time, and the way that political and ideological winds of change, so to speak. Because if you look at history, like in a grand scheme of thing, while certain cats can't be put back in the bag, we've seen things shift one way or the other. So I think right now we were at the top of an upswing. I think we might be coming down, maybe starting to start trending down a little bit, but the pendulum's not going to stop in the middle with perfection. You know, like it's going to act like gravity, right? So you're not going to let it go, and it's going to go. It's going to swing the other way, and then the other way, and then the other way. So I think that it may not happen in our lifetime, okay, but I think that there is going to be a push, a gnarly push, more towards conservatism, because people are going to be so fed up with what you're talking about, with this whole, you know, just individualism and doing whatever the hell you want, that it can swing back the other direction. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily going to be a good thing either, because like I said, it's not going to swing back to where we want it. It's going to go all the way, right? To where like people are going to go overboard with it. Just like people are going overboard with the liberalism now, right? So there is this thing that goes, and I don't know if it ever does stop in the middle. You know, I mean, just looking back from recorded history and different periods in history, I don't know if it ever does this. I think that it just swings, man.
I'll talk about that in my humble opinion. I want to Sal. How do you say that? Someone help me out. Sal Chi, whatever. Sal. Freedom. People want freedom light, man. I had when I first got back to Germany, I had this conversation with my daughter and my ex-wife, and everybody's talking about freedom and they don't feel free in Germany or whatever else. And I'm like, you guys, everybody, even the hyper independent, like, you know, individualistic people, they want freedom light. If we had absolute freedom, which I'm an advocate for, everything would go. Then we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Because, and I'll tell you this is going to sound crazy as an African American who historically comes from a people who were enslaved. Absolute freedom means that slavery is allowed. And I personally believe, you know what, it should be allowed. But it also should be allowed for the slave to kill his slave master and his family for enslaving him. That's absolute freedom.
Yeah.
Everyone is accountable for themselves. You take your power and you take your freedom. If you aren't strong enough or angry enough to retake your freedom, then you deserve to be where you are. But if someone tries to enslave me, you know what I'm going to do? When I'm in the kitchen cutting the chicken or whatever else, I'm going to come in the room and I'm going to stab you in the throat. Yes, absolute freedom. Everyone should have absolute freedom. It should be unrestricted. But then that means freedom is your responsibility. When you want to call the cops, guess what? You got guns? Oh well, I'm anti-gun. I'm a pacifist. Okay. Well, that guy right there, he wants your stuff, including your wife. You know what? He's not a pacifist. People want freedom light. People don't really want to be free.
Well, you know, Seattle. Look at Chaz. That's an example of absolute freedom, right?
Yeah. That's absolute freedom, and people don't want that. People want freedom light. I want to do whatever I want to do, but at the same time, I kinda.
You don't want any accountability.
Exactly. It's the opposite.
And that's everybody runs from account. Anybody that's, you know, I made a post about that to where I said there isn't being lost. You're either in the dark or you're in the light. You're either blind or you see. Okay. Yeah. There is no I'm lost, right? And that's what a lot of people, unless you can see, right? People, the biggest thing that they have a problem with is accountability, responsibility. They can give you an excuse for why their life is so shit, and that excuse will have everything to do with outside factors and probably next to nothing to do with them. You know, and that's how it is, you know, until you're really, you know, woke, right? Until you really can see, accountability is the biggest hurdle for people to overcome. It's the number one thing you have to do before any change that's worth anything happens.
This is why I think this comes back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, we need to collapse, because that's not going to happen until you have a collapse. Accountability and responsibility won't happen in this society. It's too soft. There's no other word for it. It's too soft. It's unprecedented. We can literally, not entirely, but we can literally like just go out at almost any hour of the night and generally be unmolested. I mean, there are places in the world you don't want to do that, but I mean, really, there were times when you couldn't go outside at night and you weren't either a troublemaker or someone looking to get in trouble, you know? But it's not going to happen because there's no need to be responsible. We see, but we see like how a lot of women, feminists in specific, they want to not be accountable and responsible for their own safety. They're like, I'm a woman. I should be able to walk down the street and in the alleyway at night by myself. I'm a 6'3" black male. I weigh over 200 pounds. I fight. I do jujitsu. I box. I kickbox. I carry knives and guns. And I'm not walking down an alley at night. If I can't do that, I'm smart enough for that. You know, I take that responsibility in my safety. But this is what people want. They want freedom light. You know. Hey, sorry, bro. This is my show. I'm like, rawr.
No. It's one of the reasons why I like Romania, like as opposed to LA, because it's. But then again, we talked about this before too, to where you take. It's very much tribe mentality here. They don't have really any immigrants or a bunch of different people. They're all Orthodox Christian and they're all Romanians. So it's like there is more of that safety factor and more of that
shared values.
Shared values, exactly. Yeah.
This goes back to my thing. We said this in another show, and I talked about it. Remember, I think it was our first episode. Segregation, man. And I mean, and I'm not talking about that dickhead segregation, but really, it is hard to. I'm trying to think of the word that I'm looking for. I'm getting some playback somewhere.
It was for me, dude. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. What was I looking for? Now there's a word I'm looking for, dude. I've been using German all day, guys. Sorry. Give me a second. Homogeneity. A homogeneous society is a more tranquil and stable one. When we look at the West, and I mean the West is proof that to a degree, multiculturalism has failed. I mean, it's unavoidable, it's unescapable. I mean, that we have a multicultural society just because of the way that the West was built. But the further east you go, the more homogenous those societies are and the more stable they are. Even if we consider them to be dysfunctional, they are dysfunctionally stable to a degree. Some societies, let's put it like that. But like Eastern Europe is a perfect example. They're a prime example. Eastern Europe is a largely homogenous society with homogenous ethnicities, cultures, beliefs, and religion. And so it's easy to maintain a baseline of behavior and expected standards of behavior because everybody is the same and they're brought up in the same culture. When you talk to those people, what are they? They are a greater society that functions on a tribal level.
I disagree that you can't integrate, but look at it from this standpoint. You can integrate, but the person integrating has to adapt the beliefs and cultures of that society.
The military is a prime example and prime proof that integration can work. But then that means the person has to be subservient to something than himself. That means he has to follow the system and it has to be greater than him. And that's the beauty about the military. You come in and they break down that hyper individualism. That's what boot camp is largely about. Dude, you aren't just you here. You know what I mean? It's the man next to you, the man over there, and he's thinking the same thing. And I mean, we need that. We need that. This it's in my book. I talk about the tribe and whatnot to a degree, a small degree, you know. But you know who does a really good piece on this? Jack Donovan, man. Jack Donovan has a good book on that. You know, I disagree with his lifestyle choices in terms of like, you know, his personal choices. That's his thing. But his book.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a conversation. Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
No, just real quick. I had a conversation with a Romanian dude. And I asked him, I said, why do you think that there's like next to no crime here? You know, and he was like, oh, yeah. And I said, well, I mean, look where I come from. There's crime everywhere. Why do you think here there's like no crime? And he looked at me like I was a little dumb, right? Like I was asking like a childish question. He was like, and he said, he goes, why would Romanians want to hurt other Romanians? And I was just like, word. Like, yes, that is the thing right there, you know, is that shared value, that shared identity. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. You know, we have this in Islam. It says, you know, the Ummah is the name for the Islamic community as a whole, the Islamic body. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be with him, he said, the Ummah, he says, you know, it's like a body. You know, what harms one part of it harms the other. It's like you have to be one. There has to be this unity. If not, it's a free for all. That's never good. You know. Yeah. We've been on for an hour and 25 minutes. Anybody got anything else? We want to keep going.
Just one more point. Just one more point. You see, when you spoke about the societies and how a homogenous societies, you know, more stable and whatnot. One thing I've noticed though is that a lot of the immigrant societies that come into Western societies, they still hold traditional values. And I see a lot of the degenerate behavior actually coming from the indigenous people. For example, in Britain, most of the people that are, you know, far left, liberal, they are English people. They're not people coming from Nigeria or Jamaica, or, you know what I mean, where we still got strong values. But it seems like it's the natives that are actually the ones coming with the degenerate ideology. So maybe they're using immigrants as a smokescreen to kind of you know, move away from their own traditional values. I don't know. It's a weird one, because I like what Bobby, you were saying, in Romania it's homogenous, so they can't hide behind nothing, if that makes sense, because everyone has a sort of shared value. But if there was another community being brought in, it might give others a chance to kind of, you know, escape from their traditional norms.
Well, I do know this. There's gypsies here, okay? And they aren't like a very large segment or of the population, but a Romanian will talk shit on a gypsy. Like they'll be like, oh yeah, they do all the crime, they don't work, they don't this and that, you know, whichever. Like they talk shit on them, you know what I mean? But it's like, and just because you're talking about scapegoat, you know, that's what it seems like to me. Is it's I'm not saying they don't do that. I'm sure they do. I've heard it too much to think that, you know, there's not something going on there. But it's just something to where like it's like a focus, you know, to where we don't do crime. They're the ones doing all the crime. You know, they're those gypsies, you know. So it's there is a small little thing, you know, that they identify as something different. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, you make a good point there, Sadiq. I mean, that is true. A lot of people come over and they have like traditional culture and societies, and they stick to it. And then you do have a local, like, I don't know, guys. This is going to be rough to say. I mean, oh gosh, I guess I'm used to saying uncomfortable shit. Let me just ask, Wraith and Bobby in specific. I have to ask you guys, what is going on with like Western Caucasian society that they just? It seems like they're suicidal, having fewer kids, getting rid of their morals. You know, it's like, is it an ethnic suicide pact that you guys have or something? I mean, I don't know what's going on, man. You guys gotta help me out, man. I don't get it.
No, not you guys. No, you know, the thing that's stripping me out is just like some white self-hatred, you know, to like where they're like taking knees and talking about how white people need to die and like all this stuff. Because like I think it has something to do with the upbringing and with the because I know the men I was around growing up, like that type of action, that just wasn't an option. Like you didn't do shit like that. You didn't think like that, you know? So I think that part of it is just they've just got some weird, shady, passive upbringing, you know?
So, okay, let's see where I want to start with this.
I had to bring it up, man. I
think it comes from the standpoint of and it affects the African American community here too. All right, and I'm not speaking for them, but this is an observation. As you look at the overall standard of living in America, and as middle class gets harder and harder to achieve in reality, I mean, changing the numbers, the government changing the numbers doesn't make you middle class. Okay. But if you look at the time when blacks were given freedom, and then the social movement for integration of blacks into white society in America, the African American got exactly what they wanted. They wanted equal rights with whites. The problem was, if you look back in the 50s and 60s, the average white was poor. They didn't live in middle class. Middle class was fairly small. The upper class was even smaller. The average white person in the 60s, they worked a 9 to 5. They made relatively little money. They lived paycheck to paycheck, and the African Americans got that right. You know, so what you see is, if you look at the white and African American communities, both in the States, they follow the same path for the lower class and even into the middle class. There's more unwed mothers. There's more fatherless families. And they're picking the wrong battle. The battle isn't whether you're discriminated because of your color. In America, it's whether you're discriminated because of your social economic position in life. So
okay. So probably my best friend is a black dude from Watts, and I agree with what you're saying. Socioeconomic, it totally makes a difference. I agree with that. But I will say this: we'll go places, and I can see that people are just looking at him and treating him differently. Like I can see it.
No, I'm not saying I'm not saying there's not prejudice.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying he asked the question of, why are whites self-destructing? Well, the thing is we're not doing it at any other rate than any other identity here in this country. The problem is we're trying to self-destruct and support, the thought of equality across the board. So and we already have that equality. We have the social economic equality. I mean, it's there. And we're not growing. We haven't grown from that. I mean, yeah, we haven't supported African Americans bettering themselves or establishing a livelihood in their own right, but we haven't done it for our poor whites either. And I'm not saying that they're poor whites in the sense that I feel sorry for them. I'm just saying economically, we created this us and them, and the poor people are buying into the us and them philosophy, and they're fighting against the them. So the only way they can do that is to identify, since on the socio-economical standpoint, they're the same. The only way they can do that is to identify with causes, whether it's the gay cause, the black cause, the Native American cause, because that now becomes the driver for your belief system. Not the beliefs that every man has a right to this. Every man has the ability to do this. It's all like, well, who's the victim today? And we can support that victim. And it creates a situation where, and Abu knows a couple of groups I'm in. One group's, the guy says, to the young African American man, aren't you out there getting your Black Lives Matter pussy? It's the wrong way to look at it. I mean, when we start drawing those lines, we fail as a society in America. And it's not about black, white. It's about whether or not, and I'm not trying to say all lives matter or any of that shit, because I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any one life is as important than any other life. But, it's your personal belief on how you sacrifice for your life and the mantles that you take up to make your life better. We're not individuals in America anymore. We're a cause. You got to figure out what the freaking cause is you want to support. And that gives you your identity. But my identity is me. My identity is, Wraith. And that's what I put forward every day. And Abu made a tweet the other day. I think it was a tweet. I follow him on so much shit I can't remember. But he made a tweet the other day talking about how he wasn't going to be judged for his beliefs. And if you didn't like it, unfriend him, defollow him, and stuff.
Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem is people aren't taking that attitude. Yeah. They want the tribe.
Yeah.
But they want the tribe of victimhood, not the tribe of success, manhood, right, and all that. And Americans, as these young people try to say, I'm not a liberal, I'm not this, I'm not that. What they try to do is find, okay, who's the most down looked upon people so that I can be a part of that and embrace my victimhood. So if you want to know why white America's failing, it's because they want to embrace victimhood. And they're taught to embrace victimhood. Matter of fact, in education, they're even shamed into embracing it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I find it problematic. And a lot of people don't like to hear this. I say the uncomfortable truths. Anybody living in the West lives in a white patriarchy. It's a fact.
Say it again.
Anybody who lives in the West lives in a white patriarchy. The West was built upon white patriarchy. And when white people disappear, we don't know what's coming up. We don't have an idea what's going to come after it. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of comfortable with my internet and stuff, I mean, I look outside, all them German dudes are making all the cables and roads and whatever else, man. And these guys don't have kids. I mean, I got 9 kids. I don't know who's going to put all that stuff together. It's German. I mean, there's only so many kids I got. I mean, I'm not saying that people of color can't do it. I'm just saying. Hey, man.
You're too much, man.
Here, man. People got to step up. Hey, no, I'm not. I'm not even. I'm not like, yeah, white people or whatever else like that. I'm just saying, hey, you want this? You want this bitch? Everybody talk about they want this place. I don't see you putting stuff together. You tearing down statues and buildings and burning banks. You're not building nothing. So, hey, what if they just decide one day it's like, hey, that engineers are like, hey, you know what? I don't need this no more. I'm out. I'm going home. And then the nuclear power plant's just sort of like roaring, making funny noises in the next 3 or 4 days. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. You got the guy out the job, whatever else now. Okay, what do we do now, homie?
Well, and I can agree with that. I mean, but God, dude, that's rough. It's hard for me to respond to that.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No,
tell me I'm wrong. You're the only black guy on the panel. Help me out here, man. Tell me I'm wrong. I mean,
no, you're right. It's food for thought. It's food for thought. At the end of the day, we can't dismantle the whole system. It doesn't make sense. We can't, unless it's by force. And I'm talking like an invasion of us, and we replace what's left behind. We can't dismantle anything and not replace it with anything. It doesn't make no sense. And I would rather live under this whole white patriarchal system than a black transgender one. Do you know what I mean? No, I'm just saying, I prefer traditional values. So it's not about color for me when it comes to traditional values. I can kind of look past color when it comes to traditional values. It's not about me siding with anything black just for the sake of it, if it doesn't align with my religious beliefs or my traditional conservative values. You know what I mean? So that means more to me than anything.
Much more eloquently put than me.
And
Thank you.
Salute to Unplugged Fitness, man.
Yes, Unplugged Fitness. Thank you. Salute to the panel. That's my homie right there.
So I guess I guess my point is why are since your original question is why are whites self-destructing? I guess I think it's because we want that homogenous society, but we can't get there. From a lot of point of views, we can't get there from here.
Mm.
Okay, there's no way. And I blame blacks for some of this too. Okay.
This one. Hold on, let me get close to the screen.
Okay. And you and I are cool because we talk.
Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. In a sense, this. Do you want, as an African American man, to be valued for your beliefs and your actions, or do you want to be valued because you're an African American man?
Well, when I'm looking for a girl in Germany, I want to be valued because I'm an African American man, because we're the flavor of the week here. Any other time,
it's your advantage.
Any other time,
in Europe,
yes,
in Europe it's a little different.
Allow me to abuse my unfair advantage, okay?
Oh shoot, that's crazy.
I do what you're saying. Actually, I think you were on the panel when we were talking to Lucario. Lucario was on the show. It was on Dude Party, and Lucario was there.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah. And I talked about this, that, in terms of like a people, African Americans do have a degree of accountability for everything that's happening to ourselves. And we have to take that responsibility. We can't be like women. We can't want responsibility, accountability. We want equality and all that stuff, but then at the same time, not take responsibility for our actions. And to a degree, and I'm not crapping on Lucario, respect to the dude, but I got the vibe that there was a kind of like, well, we're just, again, you mentioned it, the victim mentality, like, we're victims and that's it. Okay, well, you know what happened? I'll tell you something. My very first fight, I got into a fight with this kid named Chris, and he beat the living stuffing out of me. And I ended up just learning how to fight because I hated that. I could have just said, oh, you boo-hoo me, this, that, the other, and I didn't want to lose again. And I learned to fight, and I learned to fight very well. and nobody beat the stuffing out of me again, except for pro boxers. I fought a few pro boxers. They beat the stuffing out of me, but that was willful,
Right.
I willfully wouldn't put myself in that environment. So, I mean, just using that basic, example, you have to like look at your situation at some point and say, okay, there is a consistent pattern in my life or the life of the people around me, and it's a problem. How do I fix this? Because this goes back to what I was saying about our environment as human beings when I was going on my rant earlier. Our physical challenges are over. So now we have to think of a way, where are our solutions? Problems, there are always going to be problems. We need solutions. And I mean, everything has to be solution oriented. I joke online about making like this one of these girls on Twitter my third wife. I'm not overly attracted to the girl. She's kind of cute, but I joke about it. But she's smart. And when I think about the future of my children, I want my children to have a smart mother. You know what I mean? Because I'm thinking of the future. I'm not just thinking right now in my pants. Because if I'm getting down, I'm shooting for the eggs, man. I'm like ta. I'm trying to have another kid. I'm just saying. I'm fire ranting again. Let's get Novadose. Novadose asked the question: how do we hold young men accountable for being responsible for the future of our society? Since I'm ranting, I'm gonna jump on this. Nova, we can't. This goes back to tribalism now. Our society is on a pathway and it's on a roller coaster ride, and we don't know where it's gonna go. You can't pump the brakes on this thing anymore. It's like that great big snowball in the cartoon. This sucker's not gonna stop. So right now it needs to go back to making our young men accountable for our families and our tribes. That means first off, teaching them to be accountable within the household and to one another as a family. There's not enough of that, And then when they can learn accountability to family, when he goes into making a family and building his own family, he's going to have responsibility and accountability. We need to look at the world as a tribal aspect and how we fit in societies as those tribes. Now, when I say you're a tribal society, yes, you go with your people, and I'm not going to argue with you if my tribe's all white people, my tribe's all black people. I don't care what you do, but your tribe functions within the laws of the society you live in, meaning we take care of our own. You come in our neighborhood, you get stupid, we're going to come out here. Yeah, we're going to call the cops, but, they might need to call an ambulance also. You know what I mean? Don't come in here doing stupid stuff. At the same time, I'm not advocating being a vigilante. That's not what I'm saying either. Your reaction is consummate to the crime being committed. So there's a group protection mentality in your ethics, morals, virtues, values, and then physical also. But you do this within the framework of the law of the country that you live in. So there's no way you're going to save society. It's just society's on that roller coaster, and we just got to see where the sucker's going to take us. And if something pops, if a wheel flies off, then you and your people are going to be ready to take care of yourselves. There's nothing you can do for society anymore, man. It's over. That's done. These days are over, in my humble opinion. Anyone else?
Hey, so just a quick question. This yard stream doesn't pop up on the Twitter feed when we do it? Like as far as, how on Twitter when they're doing a Periscope, like it'll pop up at the top? Yard stream don't do that?
I can set it up for Twitter, but I set it up for YouTube. But I don't think you can do both unless you're paid.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
I don't know if you can cast the two places at once. I don't know.
You probably have to pay, because that would be lit. Like, I mean, as far as just like getting, like having, because people scroll up and down. Yeah. No, I was just wondering, because I popped this open right now and I can see that someone's on, but I was like, hey, that ain't us. So just checking.
So let me say something to what Nova said. I think you can start holding young men accountable, but it's doing it through like groups, Abu's groups and other groups on the internet to start having young men take responsibility for themselves, and a lot of that goes through the fact of game and stuff like that. Guys wanting that information. But I think, like one of the groups I'm in, they give that information, but a lot of it is other stuff too. Like how do you control your finances and all those things to start working on each man and help start giving them the example of what their fathers didn't teach them, and
plus you have to pick your groups wisely,
right?
Yeah,
because there's some that there's some that when you're talking about morals and values and how to do this or be that, there's some that openly advocate for, you know, like, don't get married, or, you know, don't trust no hoe, you know. And it's like, you can't start a moral and valuistic family if that's your mindset. So you have to go for the people that are,
right,
you know, on the same terms, because there's a lot of them out there that just aren't. That's why I started my own group.
Yeah, I wouldn't say don't trust no hoe, but I would say, and let me pick that point. I would say that understand the nature of women. Okay, sure. And I've been married twice, and I've never been divorced. Both my wives passed away, but I understand the nature of women. All right, and as a man, it's my responsibility, if I'm going to enter into that relationship, long-term marriage, whatever you want to call it. All right, as a man, it's my responsibility to set the tone for the relationship. You know, and if you can't do that, then you're at the mercy of crazy. That's just the best way I could put it. You know, so, you know, I think we can help young men, and I think we do it as being mentors and stuff in these groups. And like I said, I read Abu's book, and I did a review on Abu's book. It's on Facebook page. And I think he used it also. But the thing is Abu's black, I'm white, but we live similar lives as teenagers. You know, so the reality of it is, it doesn't matter what your color is. You know, there are key points of your life that you can relate to other men across that venue. Yeah. You know, and if we're not taking advantage of that to teach young men, we're screwing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
An hour and 46 minutes.
We're coming up on 2 hours.
Yeah.
We're coming up on 2 hours.
You might as well round it out, man. Come up with another subject for 15 minutes.
I wish I could. I'm like, I've been going like crazy rants today. Never ranted on the show. I just went off. If there's no more questions, we're gonna wrap this up here. This is OG Logic number 5. Thank you, Ray, for coming on the show.
No problem, brother.
Like announced, surprise guest. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
it's always a pleasure to interact with you online. We should actually do a show sometime, man. It's like my next availability open is sometime. We'll talk on. Well, I don't have to do this now.
All right.
Thank you, people. OG Logic number 5. We'll be back next week on Monday. We're out.
Respect.